Now, Lucinda is joining us slightly earlier than normal. And hello, darling.
Good morning, good morning.
I'm sorry I'm slightly later than we'd originally planned, but
Okay.
now have I got you enough? Oh, it's me, Dan, the volume. So Lucinda Lidston is normally our Friday therapist. Of course, it's Thursday today, and today she's our Thursday therapist. And I had such a good response to the conversations that Lucinda and I have been having, where she's been delving into sort of elements of pop culture to a certain degree about what's going on in terms of influencing children. And we're going to talk today about dark Disney. And well, where would you like to start, my dear?
Yeah, okay. So I had just a brief look at the more academic literature about Disney. And one of the themes that leapt out at me is exactly what you've just said, that the issue with Disney is it's such a massive corporation now. And it's about the influence. You know, all the things we've been discussing recently is about the influence on our young people. So we need to be really clear about what that is. So I kind of went from there and just had a brief look at what companies Disney own. I'm not going to read them all out because it's a very extensive list, as you might imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got, just to name a few, we've got ABC, Touchstone Pictures, Marvel, Hollywood Records. There's a publishing company, etc. They now own, well, maybe they have for a while, but the Muppets. Marvel, I think, is a fairly recent acquisition. Is that the word?
Yeah,
Acquisition?
absolutely.
Yeah. The Chronicles of Narnia, I didn't realise, the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Gosh.
Obviously, Winnie the Pooh and Indiana Jones and Grey's Anatomy.
That is an extensive reach of influence, isn't it?
Yeah. And what made me kind of smirk to myself with the whole climate agenda is that they have a company called Earth Star Incorporated, which is a company of private jets, which they use to cart their Disney executives around.
I see.
I thought that was interesting. And stockholders, you'll like this. Who are the top stockholders? The Vanguard Group and BlackRock.
Oh, come on.
Yes.
It literally, the world is going to boil down to hedge fund managers. That's where we're going to come, because so much decisions, political decisions, COVID, etc., absolutely not engineered, but ramped up and benefiting these hedge fund companies. They all work together. Big farmers are all represented. I could go on this, but basically that doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good.
Yeah, and to pick up on your point about the COVID fiasco, what happened? All the small, medium businesses start to collapse. And so this is my concern, and I think a lot of people's concern, is that these major corporations, there'll be a handful running the whole of the planet and choosing everything that we buy and consume in every way possible. So, you know, what is that if it's not a massive way of influencing us all, you know?
Absolutely. So Disney has obviously been influencing for a very long time. We know, we know for fact, even though it's denied, we know for fact that they have put sexual imagery in their cartoons. That Snopes thing, I don't trust Snopes anyway, but saying that gift card is not a penis. Of course it's a penis. You can blatantly see, even the way Mickey is holding Minnie's dress.
Yeah.
It's a penis. Don't be ridiculous.
And the tip comes over Minnie's mouth.
Exactly, it does. I'm looking at it right now. A dress simply wouldn't do that. You're absolutely right.
No, quite vile.
Right.
And I thought, as an aside, you and I talking like this, you know, women of a certain age, I thought, oh my goodness, maybe we've become prudish. Do you remember back in the 80s, what was that political lady who always used to comment on stuff on the TV and wanted to censor everything?
You're not talking about Mary Whitehouse?
Yes, that's it.
I'm a proud Mary White. I don't care. She was right. She was demonized. She was demonized because the perverts and the predators of media wanted to carry on their agendas, and she was highlighting it, particularly about the BBC. She said they're depraved there. Absolutely right. They got a pedo statue at the front of the building, for goodness sake.
Yeah. So we're not being prudish. We're just talking about where are the boundaries here and what is appropriate for our children, because that's our common interest, you and I, is that we are very worried about the over-sexualization of the whole planet, actually, but particularly children. So that's kind of where we're coming from. So yes, so to pick up on your point about all the sexual themes in the films, let me see if I can find them.
Lot of penis, a lot of more peni.
Yeah,
I don't know what
most of it is phallic. Most of it is phallic.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've said Minnie Mouse wearing the clothes are drawn to look like a penis.
There's a Little Mermaid.
There's a Little Mermaid, and the priest gets an erection. And I looked at that. I checked all these out. Everybody, you can find them on YouTube. I checked them out, and there's no other way you can look at it, because I did think, we know that the human mind makes patterns out of shapes and all the rest of it. And the old adage, if you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I thought, well, I'm trying to bring some kind of rationale to it.
Right.
But the list goes on. In The Rescuers, you can't see it, but it's like a subliminal image where you have to watch it frame by frame. But the plane's going past an apartment building, and in one of the windows there's an image of a naked woman in the background.
I know it well.
Yeah. And they're saying that the skunk in Bambi, when he becomes shocked or whatever it is, he turns red and is penis shaped and kind of rigid. Apparently the word sex appears in a dust cloud in The Lion King. I'm a little bit skeptical about that.
Yeah, I am.
You can turn that into, it's not clearly sex.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree. Some of them are so obvious. Like,
some of them are.
What is the one with the castle where you can see the phallic symbol? Is that's
in the background? It's the advert for, I'm not sure, was it for Aladdin? It's one of the,
I think it is Aladdin. You're absolutely right. And it is quite clearly so. I mean, the thing is, some of this is so clear. It isn't a case of, I've forgotten the word, where something looks, well, like an egg can look like Jesus or whatever, but it's,
a piece of toast.
Yeah, that's right.
No, it's not that. Some of them are absolutely overt.
Yes,
They're
100%. 100%. They've been doing it for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And you don't know whether it's because, I don't know how they do it now. It's very, very different. But obviously, when they first started out, there were hundreds of artists doing all the scenes, because it was very labor intensive.
Yeah.
And you wonder whether somebody's kind of subtly put that in for a joke and it's not been picked up by any kind of I don't know what the word is, you know what I mean. But some of these are just so obvious, and in this day and age, everybody points to everything, don't they? You can't hide anything.
No, you can't.
And Walt Disney himself, there's mixed stories about him. He freely said in an interview that his public persona was nothing like his private persona, because he drank and he smoked, and he tries to present this really wholesome exterior. And people say that, he was very driven, and some say that he was a tyrant. But when you see interviews of his staff that worked with him, mostly they respect him. And it said that he loved children, and ultimately he was trying to build a fantasy world, similarly to Michael Jackson with his Neverland. And we've all got different opinions about Michael Jackson, haven't we? So, but there was a story I came across that, because Disney was married and he had children, obviously, but there was a story I came about that insinuated that he was homosexual, had some inappropriate relationship with a young lad, but I couldn't find much to kind of verify that, so I don't know.
He was a high-ranking Freemason, wasn't he?
Yes, and that's the other thing. He was criticised for being anti-Semitic, being involved with the Nazis, being sexist, and saying that women weren't creative enough. I do think in all of these things, though, we do have to consider the cultural attitudes of the time as well, because that does play a part. Yeah, and I think it's only fair to say that.
Yeah.
So the first Disney theme park was built in Anaheim in California in 1955. And what he ultimately wanted to do was, a bit like these smart cities, he wanted to create, what did he call them? Let me see if I can find it. Oh, goodness me, because it had an interesting name. I don't know if I'm going to find it at the minute, but he wanted to create literally a city and like a futuristic city, the city of the future, where everything was going to be wonderful and all the rest of it. But he died before that could be realized at all. But he bought up loads of land, and as like a kind of tax evasion, he had to develop all sorts of property companies to buy up all this land. Now, when it comes to the Disney parks, there's I don't know if you've seen it. There's been a recent sheriff who's brought to it's Sheriff Grady Judd, and he's done a lot of interviews bringing to public awareness all the prosecutions that have happened with Disney employees over time for either being involved in paedophile gangs or trafficking of children, and a lot of them just being lone paedophiles. Now, again, I think we have to take a measured view. I don't think we can blame Disney for that, because if you're a budding paedophile, where are you going to go?
Where children are.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously that's going to be one of your favoured places to go and to work. So there's been a lot of criticism about that, you know, are the checks adequate, etc., etc. And I was talking to a friend yesterday, a terrible tale, and I haven't checked this out, but this is the story that I've been told. Apparently in Florida, under the theme park, there's all these tunnels which help them. So say at Halloween, they'll have a theme, won't they? It'll all be themed. And then immediately that that's over, it'll all be taken down. And then the more Christmas theme will start. And so they've got all tunnels underneath to enable them to do that really quickly and efficiently, yes? But the word is that this is how children are snatched and taken, is by dragging them into these tunnels and then put a different clothing on them, and then, you know, job done, they're taken away. And one of the terrible stories that this lady told me was that back in the late 80s, when she was a child, her father worked with somebody who had taken his child to Disney, and the child was in the female toilets and seemed to be a very long time. And so eventually he was asking people, is my daughter still in there? Can you check she's all right? And the daughter was taken, never ever to be returned. And every year after, he used to go back and look for her. Absolutely tragic, absolutely awful, terrible story. Yeah. Oh. So, you know, but sadly, paedophiles are going to be, you know, attracted to that scene, aren't they?
Yeah, they certainly are.
Now, traditionally, Disney, obviously, when you think of the age, 1928 was his first animated cartoon, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. But back in those days, very much focused on the nuclear family, you know, your traditional nuclear family. And then over the years, they recognised that there was another revenue stream, small but significant, and that's the whole gay revenue stream, the whole LGBT community. So they've been really promoting that, and unofficially they're called Gay Days. Now, recently, the Florida theme park has been at the centre of a storm because you must know, I'm sure you do, about Florida, the parental rights bill. Yeah. And they've brought that in, for people that don't know, that's to stop any teachers teaching primary age children anything about sex and gender issues.
Great.
Which is fantastic, which is absolutely what you and I sure would want. But Disney has been criticised by the whole LGBT group, and what's his name, Matt, who did the What is a Woman, Matt Walsh?
Walsh, yes.
Walsh, yes. On his podcast, he was saying that Disney have caved to that influence, because they're now taking away their statements of welcome, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and it's now
they are
fellow dreamers or whatever. But they were also talking about the term princess. Well, princess is the staple part of Disney for little girls, isn't it? You know, I asked my staff all about what they thought about Disney, and I did some research from asking people. And one of the things they spoke about was the Disney princesses for little girls. Right. Every little girl wants to be a Disney princess. And indeed, years ago, I think I worked with somebody who was a Disney princess. Also, that was one of the criticisms, because they were saying that traditionally, all the feminine characters were stick thin, blonde, princess, you know, and you're waiting for your prince to rescue you because you can't manage on your own. That's kind of thing. And then no sooner have you met him, you're marrying him, you know. So there was a lot of criticism there. And sadly, one of my colleagues, her daughter had said, "Oh, mummy, I'm not pretty enough because I've got dark hair," and because they're all blonde. and long hair and little waists and big boobs and, you know, the whole stereotype.
Yeah, the whole Barbie look.
Yes. However, that is changing. And
Yes.
now women are being promoted as being strong and independent, not needing men, and their bodies are slightly different, but still slim.
Yeah, still that slim thick we were talking about
Yes.
last week.
Yes, exactly. And where was I going with that? Yes, but some of but some of the good themes are Inside Out, of course, was about feelings.
I like that.
Yeah, and in adolescence, and you know, exploring all of that. And I think that one of the recent ones is Turning Red, and again it's about a little girl in adolescence and all the changes that happen in the body, etc. So that sounds quite positive. However, my colleague that works on my little child team, she said that when she watched it with her daughters, who are still very young, she had to stop it and explain to them, so they didn't kind of readily understand. She had to kind of walk them through it, but nonetheless good themes there. But one recent criticism, have you heard of this show? But it's on what channel is it? Network FXX, which is a Disney owned channel, and it's called Little Demons, an animated show with Danny DeVito.
Oh yeah, no, we've talked about that months ago. Yes, it's very satanic.
Yes, because he makes a woman pregnant to create the Antichrist, and the Antichrist is a little 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
So in America, all the Christian groups, of course, don't like that. And I'm not saying that, I haven't watched it, so I can't judge, but some of the themes do seem a little bit suspect. And why is this necessary? You know, why do we need to depict a 13-year-old girl, you know, as the Antichrist? And is this then tying into the obsession of celebrities and the elites with Satanism? Seems to be the stories. Again, I don't know how true this is, but we see these themes and these stories about Satanism, don't we? Again and again and again.
Yeah, and it has to mean something. This is not, it just can't be random stuff.
Yeah. So,
but I think part of the problem I have, for example, is the president of Walt Disney currently is Carrie Burke. And
yes.
Carrie Burke came out saying, oh, my own children are pansexual and transgender. And from now on, 50% of our output, you know, must reflect this. And it's like 50% of our world is not pansexual and transgender people. Do get a grip. And
well, that's right.
Yeah, it's troubling, isn't it? I'm a mother of 2 queer children, she announced in a column. So, and it's like that really, really concerns me. We've just had somebody on prior to you, a mother who has gone through the whole trans issue with her child. Like her daughter came to her at 11 years old, born in the wrong body, etc., etc. And that people are dealing with this at the coalface while this is being promoted on a massive world stage.
Yeah,
and
that's what we come back to again, isn't it? You know, you're a massive influence and you're misrepresenting society. Now, of course, every human should have the same rights as every other human. Of course they should.
Yes.
But you are a minority group. And it's interesting, I was talking to the sheep farm guys, who are of mixed heritage, both of them, lovely guys. And they were saying, you know, they are entitled to speak out because they have black lineage. And they were saying, you know, it's overrepresented. It doesn't represent society. And this is what Matt Walsh was saying, that Disney's caved to that pressure because I think in the film Lightyear, apparently there was a same-sex kiss and the scene was deleted. And then they were lobbied and they put the scene back in. Well, I you know, maybe I haven't particularly got an issue with that, but you know, why do we have to have any kind of sex displayed in a Disney film on any level?
But also it's this sheer hypocrisy of it, because these companies, they do it all the time, and that is they pump out this stuff to Western children, but when you go to like the Middle East and everything, they doctor all these things out of the films. So it's not like they're standing up to be counted at all. If it doesn't play in a territory, they take it out.
Of course, because it's all about money.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you're being incredibly fair to Disney. You're being very balanced, and I think that's one of the things that I love about your approach to these things, because you're not just going, well, this, you are looking at it and attempting to look at all sides of, but it does disturb me when I look at some of the young people who came through Disney, you know, Miley Cyrus,
Mickey Mouse clubs,
Britney Spears. These are people who are quite screwed up and over sexualized. Britney Spears just posted a picture on Twitter yesterday where she's fully naked, lying down, talking about her pussy. You're a mother of two. Please, can we get, and there's, because she's all of her experience.
So damaged.
She's very damaged, very damaged. Yeah. But you look at it and there's like, whatever, 200,000 likes on this. Is nobody going to say to her, you need help, my love, you need help? But her start would not have helped her to be in that environment.
Yeah, and I've got a number of thoughts about that. I've got my eye on the time because I know you need to
no, it's cool, it's absolutely cool
to speak to the lovely Mo, but that was one of the things that I did want to, I knew you wanted to talk about, that the whole Mickey Mouse Club thing.
Where is me?
Our family's very musical. I do a bit of singing. I'm not a singer, but I love singing and I find it a great release. So I'm often looking at vocal coaches on YouTube. And I saw a clip of Britney Spears when she was very young singing, and she had a lovely deep resonance to her voice. Beautiful, lovely. Right. And as she's got older and older and older, the voice has got more and more and more babyfied.
This is your point about the Kardashians as well, isn't it?
Exactly. And if you remember her Hit Me Baby One More Time, you know, she's dressed up as a schoolgirl, isn't she, with bunches, etc. But I wondered if one aspect is that when they're in the Mickey Mouse Club, it's all little girl and quite wholesome. And then I suppose what entices them is that they want to break away from that childlike image. And so they move into this over-sexualized image, which is encouraged by the music industry, because they want to break from that, and they want to renew themselves and to be justified and validated as an adult pop singer. And I wonder if that, I don't know, but I just wondered if that's a
good point. I think that's a really, really good point. The thing is also the reason why I find Disney so concerning, just to go back to a point you made, and that is we've been sold this idea that it's sort of wholesome and about family values. Well, that it's like, if we knew from the get-go that they were going to, you know, infiltrate children's minds and program them in a certain way and everything, we'd have our guard up. But because we believe them to be a certain way, people literally sit their children down in front of the TV and let them just watch Disney without, you know, any thoughts or at all attached to it. So I find those things that I'm not articulating very well, but you take my point. It's like,
yes,
we're off guard. We're caught off guard.
Exactly right. And some of these messages and images that we've been speaking about are subliminal. They flash by and you don't catch them. But also, you sent me your wonderful article that you wrote in 20
long time ago.
But you were saying about this theme, and I asked my staff about it, of parents not being there, or mothers being killed off, or being, you know, orphaned, or fathers being distant, or some shadowy figure. And you raised the point that because Disney's mother died, Walt Disney's mother died after he'd moved them to a new home, and then there was something wrong with the
started to get money. That's right.
But so we wondered whether he was projecting something about himself, you know, not having his mum. But given that he's trying to create this perfect world with the perfect family, it's interesting that so many of the early films had this theme where one or both parents are missing.
And later films, when you look at like Finding Nemo, in the opening of it, that the entire Nemo's family, apart from father, it's completely obliterated by a barracuda or whatever. I mean, they're quite violent.
Yes, and then I wondered whether there was a sinister thread here about children being on their own and vulnerable.
Right. You know, Pinocchio. There's a scene in Pinocchio which 100% actually sounds like they're talking about like an Epstein's Island. They're talking about taking boys to this island and they don't come back as children.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that was pointed out in one of the more academic literatures was that when people hear these stories like Sleeping Beauty, they immediately think that it comes from Disney. And of course, these are based on fairy tales, folk tales, legends, Hans Christian Andersen, the Grimm brothers. And those stories, those folk stories that those fairy tales are based on, are grim, are grim. They have difficult endings. They're very dark. And so, of course, they need to be tidied up for a child audience. But they were originally warnings to children. But then I thought, well, you know, children all too soon lose their innocence in the world of today, don't they? So is there anything wrong with having, like, you know, always good overcomes evil and having these kind of fluffy bunny outcomes? In a way, I thought, well, maybe that's not such a bad thing.
No.
I've got a member of staff in particular who is obsessed by Disney, bless her. And I said to her, maybe we can end on this. I said to her, what is it? And she said, it's the whole magic of it. She said, it's the whole fairy tale, wonderful world, everything turns good. And that's what she absolutely adores about it, the whole fantasy of it.
Right. Interesting.
But, you know, I think, what was it I said, my last line on my write up here? I said, but ultimately, where the light shines at its brightest, the shadow of darkness will surely fall. And it does, doesn't it?
Great point.
Unfortunately.
Really important point. I knew you'd tackle it. Great. Absolutely love these conversations. Next week, we're going to tackle the diet industry, aren't we?
Oh my goodness. And one of my specialisms is working with eating disorders. So we'll maybe talk about that a bit as well.
Wow. Really look forward to that. Thank you so much for illuminating the vision. But again, for bringing that balance and levity to the conversation, really important, because none of us want to be seen as like hair trigger and going this, and this. We just want to zone in on the facts. And there is no doubt about it. There are phallic images all over Disney. There is no doubt about it. These children are sexualized. There's no doubt about it. There's inappropriate material. Those things are really important to focus on. Thank you so much. But the magic aspect that you've just talked about regarding your staff member is exactly what also makes it so dangerous, isn't it?
Well, yes, because that's the hook.
Respects.
That's the hook. Yeah.
There you go. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Everybody, wonderful Lucinda Lidston. Take good care of yourself, darling.
Bye, darling.
See you next Friday as usual.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.